I worked as a trucker for 10 years back in the 1980s. I worked with different companies, moving all things from animals, machinery, and even refined metals. At the time of this incident, I worked for one of the biggest producers of chicken in the United States. My job was strictly transport. I would move live chickens from farm to plant or process meats to dispensaries. It paid well, but kept me away from the family a lot more than I liked. The wife had wanted me to get a more local job for years, but the pay cut was hard to take. The day all this started, I'd just come back from a 4-day drive, delivering chicken byproducts to a disposal site. My wife had voiced her want for attention, so I was in a hurry to get home. I had just pulled up to the stop sign leaving for work when I saw my boss. I will call him B for the purposes of the story. He ran outside the front doors to catch me. The temptation to sling rocks his way was palpable. He had forced the last job on me, and I wanted to go home. But instead of causing a scene, I parked my truck as he made his way to my driver's side window. While he stood watching me roll down the window, I knocked some ash from my cigarette onto his boots. He looked annoyed at that, but started, "Thank God I caught you on. You better thank me for not driving off and leaving you dry. Who do you think you are, huh? It's been weeks since I saw my wife, and you come running out here trying to drag me back onto the road. How do you know I was going to ask you to pick up a load? What if you had forgotten something?" He had a nervous smile when he said this, and I wanted to punch him. I stared at him for a long minute, which wiped the smile off his face. Looking on, M called again. "I've tried everything, but he is not picking up. I've got a very important load my boss wants moved as soon as possible." I clicked my tongue before turning the ignition. "Wait, there's a big bonus on this one. $1,000 for whoever takes it. Straight out of the boss's pocket too, not taxed, all cash." That changed my attitude and definitely caught my attention. I thought we had an okay life, but things could always be a bit better. I took my hand off the gear shift. "Dang it, B, where to? And you had better call my wife and tell her why I won't be home tonight. It's at one of our old warehouses. We stopped stocking it 4 years back. Now we just store old equipment there. It's a 3-day drive from here." "Oh, Jesus. Well, let's get it loaded. I'd like to get this done," I said. My rig was pretty tacky. I'm embarrassed to say it was jet black with flames rolling down the back. Thinking back, it was dang ugly, and it turned heads in the wrong way. You know, a lot of eye rolls and scoffs. Some of the loaders were getting the trailer ready. It was an enclosed trailer we called a dry van. They carried a large metal box on a forklift. It had small holes along the sides and the top. The holes were big enough to fit your pinky through, kind of like what you would carry a new pet home in. "The heck you got me hauling. I've never carried something like that before," I said. "Can't tell you that. Don't worry, it's nothing illegal," he said. Whatever it was, it made B sweat though. He stood a good 20 feet away from that trailer. I've moved chickens before, but they were always in flimsy wire cages. This thing was made of thick metal and painted matte black. It was, heavy too. The forks creaked as it was lifted into the trailer. Some of the idle workers backed away. It was loaded onto the trailer with a substantial thud. "When you get to the warehouse, there will be a man waiting for you. All you got to do is pull the trailer around back, unhook, and drive off. He will do the rest," he said. "You want me to leave the trailer?" "Yeah, don't worry about it. I'll get someone to pick it up later," he said. But before I could get away, he grabbed me by the arm with unusual force and pulled me close. "One last thing, Anon. Don't open up that trailer. Whatever you think you hear in there, you don't open it. Got it?" he said. I would have laughed at him, but something in his tone, the way he looked at me, stifled it in my throat. I realized that B was not happy about this either. His mention of noises did not fill me with confidence. The first night was rough. When I finally left for the warehouse, I'd been on the road all day and was not ready for another long drive. Staying at the office was an option, but this seemed important, so I drove for a few hours before quitting near a local stop. It was familiar to me. It was a little gas station just outside of home base. I checked to make sure my truck was secured, locked up, and I went into shower. It was nice to wash off the day before resting. The plan was to be on the road again by 8 AM, so no time was wasted on the shower. While walking by the trailer, I noticed a strange clicking sound coming from inside. It was quiet, and at first, it sounded like the truck. Listening though, it wasn't the normal odd sounds it makes after a long drive. It sounded like someone clicking their tongue with a hefty bass to it. I put my hand on the trailer. The sound reverberated off of the metal walls. No one had gotten in. Every lock was still secure, and no other vehicle was around. It was weird, but I blew it off. There wasn't much time to care anyway. Whatever the clicking was, it stopped sometime during the night. Before leaving, I debated calling Bay, but he told me the noises were nothing, so he would not be giving me an answer. Still, I felt he should know, so I gave the payphone a ring. He didn't pick up, so I left a voicemail. Hey, Bay, whatever y'all got moving is making weird sounds. If this thing is a bomb or something, I think it's a dud. Things stopped clicking last night, and been real quiet since. I'll call you if something else happens. You better pick up next time, and on. I hung the phone back up and hit the road. I drove another 12 hours through the mountainous foothills of the Appalachians. The highways do not run as smooth there. You will go up and over larger hills and drive along the mountain. For an inexperienced driver, it would be intimidating. It was for my first few drives. At this point though, I'd driven over them close to 100 times, so my nerves were under control. It was my 9th hour of the drive and the road was small. 2 cars could barely pass by one another. Luckily, it had been empty until this point. A turn came up, and as I prepared for it, a black 70s Impala came flying around the corner on the wrong side of the road. With little time for a reaction, I slammed my brakes and laid on the horn, hoping to God the person would change lanes. Smoke bowed from the wheels as the smell of burnt rubber filled my cab. The ear-scraping sound of the tires was accompanied by a loud squelch of metal which came from inside the trailer. The rig came to a stop just as the Impala switched lanes. It barely missed the rear end of my trailer as it blew past me down the road. Fuck. I tried to scream more out the window, but the smoke from my brakes and tires forced me to cough. The truck was not damaged, thankfully. The most concerning thing was the clicking sound. It was back, and with more rapidity than earlier. I got out to check the trailer. The thing rumbled with each click. A new large dent now stuck out from the side. It had a point to it, like something large and sharp had slammed into the side. The veins in my head were pumping fast, and I was hot. I would get this way sometimes, like a kettle on a red-hot stove, spewing steam through the air, waiting for relief. I say this so you know that I was not thinking straight when I yanked the keys out of the ignition and grabbed the flashlight from under the seat. I made my way to the back while fumbling with the keys. I cursed B and the big boss for forcing this job on me. I found the right key and shoved it into the lock that held the latch and the 2 large doors. The lock opened with a snap. I opened the door, leaving the keys hanging from the lock. As they opened, the whole trailer fell silent. The clicking stopped immediately. The light from my flashlight revealed the large metal crate. It was toppled onto its side. The lock was still secured, but the top had been ripped open from the inside. Large speckled feathers lay around the box. I would not say that they were chicken feathers though, because they were the size of my forearm. The silence from inside the trailer calmed my blood, but the sight of the toppled crate is what snapped me out of my anger. I suddenly felt this was a terrible mistake, especially when I looked towards the darkened part of the trailer. There were 4 eyes staring back at me. The bottom 2 were green, like algae, baked in a dried up lake. The top 2 were a deep blue, like the last layer of the ocean before total darkness. As I stared back, the clicking began again. It was slower than before, and I felt it echoing through my chest. Its pupils dilated as it lowered towards the ground. I was unable to move. I did not move the light onto the creature. Whatever it was deserved to stay in the dark, and I did not want to see it. Its rhythmic noise increased in speed as it moved closer towards me. I could feel the death stare on me. I knew if I remained, nothing good would happen. Its pupil shrunk, forming tiny black holes at the center of its eyes. It charged forward with heavy footsteps, rocking the ground with its apparent weight. With a pounding heart, I slammed the door and threw the lock over the latch. I went to snap it shut, but the thing hit the door, throwing me off the back. I landed on my side hard, crushing my collarbone. It kept slamming into the door, causing dents to form. The latch rattled, threatening to open. I jumped up and with a bit of pain, I snapped the lock shut. It rammed into the doors a few more times before finally stopping. The trailer rocked with its movement as the sound slowly subsided. Making my way to the driver's side door with shaking hands, I drove away. The whole ride was spent 20 miles per hour above the speed limit. It took another 2 hours before the next stop came into view. I wasted no time calling Bay. I found his personal phone this time. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, but after calling twice, he finally picked up. B speaking. Who is it? He said, yawning. B, what the fuck do you have me moving? That thing nearly ripped my head off, I said. Anon, wait. Please don't tell me you opened the back. You're damn right I did. Some stupid kid came flying on the wrong side of the road and nearly killed us both, so I went to check the load like we were supposed to. B, I saw that the crate was turned over and its lid had been ripped off. Christ, Anon, you have to get to the warehouse now. I need to call the handler. He's going to need backup, he said, losing all of his tiredness at once. Handler, what are you talking about? Anon, be quiet, do your job, and get back home. What's important right now is that you get to that warehouse. It's not going to stay passive for long. I slammed the phone into its place. I could feel a shooting pain up my shoulder. It sucks being the lowest man on the totem pole. You're never told anything. I hoped to get some rest, but that was not going to happen apparently. So I went inside the truck stop and grabbed some caffeine pills. With a few of them shoved into my mouth, a cigarette in my lips, and the radio cranked up all the way, I started the engine. That was one of the longest drives of my entire life. After I left the stop, I did not take my foot off the pedal until I reached the warehouse. A few times I blew past a smoky, and I surely thought I would get pulled over, but they did not even flash their lights. It was strange, since it really could have cost me my job, but I guess B pulled some strings to make this happen quickly maybe. The warehouse was completely dark when I pulled up. There were no other buildings nearby. The gate was open, but I could tell all the windows and doors had locks. There were a few no trespassing signs on the fencing, a bunch of decommissioned trailers with the company logo set in the parking lot, along with 3 black sedans. When I pulled around back, there was a group of men sitting around waiting. All 4 of them were wearing thick Kevlar jackets and padding. 3 of them had large brown gun cases, and when I pulled up, they began to unlatch them. I stepped out and began to unhook the trailer. When I finished, one of the guys walked over to me. He was dressed like the others, but his clothes under the armor signified he was in a different pay bracket. I was about to speak when he reached into his pocket and pulled out a large wad of cash. It was way more than 1,000, that's for sure. For your troubles, thanks for getting it here quickly. Best not to talk about this, got it? As much as I wanted answers, the cash was more tempting. Plus, I had a good idea of what would happen if I said no. Got it, I said. I grabbed the money from him and hopped in the truck. Good man. Now go home to your wife and son, he said. That felt like a veiled threat to me. I decided that I would not be sticking around. As I was leaving, I heard loud and rapid gunfire coming from the warehouse. I actually quit my job that day. I called B on a payphone and told him so. He seemed to understand, and even said he'd be a reference for me. It was $5,000 they gave me that night. Back then, that was a good bit of money for a single 2-day job. I still don't know what that was or why I had to transport it there. I had no idea what they were doing with it either. I'm not sure if they killed it or just pacified it. I've looked on other sites, but no one has claimed to have ever done anything similar. I never really got a good look at it either, so I couldn't really give an accurate description. Anyone else experienced anything similar? Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. This experience is one that I've kept to myself for a very long time. I've always wanted to put it out there, but I've always had this concern of people telling me that I was lying or was just making it up. This is something that happened to myself and my cousin when we were much younger. That night, my cousin and I believe we ran into the Jersey Devil out in the Pine Barrens. I was spending time with my cousin back when I was about 20. While I was there, we had made plans to go on this camping trip as a way to wrap up our summer. This is only natural when you're in that part of New Jersey. I had told him that I wanted to spend a few nights in the Pine Barrens. This is an area notorious for those urban legends about how creepy the woods can be. We were fully aware of all of the stories about the Jersey Devil, but being that age, and with him having lived there, we all thought that it was just a joke. We thought it was just a story to tell the kids, to keep them out of the woods. When we got to our destination, we settled in for the night. It was a spot that was a bit secluded and far away from other places. The first day was great. We did some hiking, cooked up our food over a small fire, and we turned in pretty early. The second day, we spent a lot of time out enjoying the weather. We had broken out our case of beer so that we could party a bit over the campfire. That was honestly the overall plan of the trip. I was 20 and my cousin was 22, so we planned on going out into the woods to get drunk and have a good time. That night, we started drinking and sitting around the fire, and my cousin started telling me about his plans for college, telling me how he had actually gotten a scholarship for whatever sport it was that he played, and in the middle of the sentence, we both paused and looked into the trees. The silence of the forest was broken by a weird sound, a high-pitched scream mixed in with a low growling sound. When we both heard it, I mentioned that it was probably just a wounded fox. I said that they make some really creepy noises, and it was most likely just that. My cousin laughed and said that it was creepy as hell. Then we heard it again, except this time, the higher-pitched tone was less prominent, and the growling was way louder. I then said that we should probably just go ahead and get to sleep. Part of me wanted to just ignore the sound and not think about it. My cousin agreed, and we got into the tents and went to sleep. After a bit, I did doze off, but I was woken up by that same sound again, probably around an hour or so later. I heard it, and my eyes shot open, like an instinctual reaction to the sound. It was like my body was telling me, hey, you need to wake up and be scared. I just stayed there on the sleeping bag for a few seconds. I was just staring up at the ceiling of the tent, thinking about whether or not this thing was actually a threat. That's when I started hearing footsteps near the tents. I glanced over to where I thought they were coming from, and sure enough, there was something there. The steps were a bit heavy. As this thing approached, I started to get hit with this heavy fear. Then I saw a hand-like appendage pressing against the fabric of the tent. It was almost like it was rubbing it, trying to figure out what it was. The thick fabric crinkled and folded slightly as this thing started pushing against the walls and then the top. I just sat there, thinking it will lose interest, just hoping it will walk away. Thankfully, it did lose interest after a while, and it did start walking away. At that point though, I had to know what the hell that was, so when I was satisfied that it was a good distance away, I unzipped my tent to see if I could find this creature. To my surprise, my cousin was already standing outside of his tent, as pale as a ghost underneath the moonlight. It was at that point that I realized that this thing was not just a normal creature, nor was it something I was imagining. He had seen it very clearly. I saw this thing too, but he saw it in much better detail. What I saw was a very tall beast-like thing that was covered in matted fur, and I swear that this thing had wings that were tucked in. My cousin added 2 details to this that makes me think this thing was the Jersey Devil. He said that it had glowing eyes that he saw as it walked away. He also claimed it had legs with knees that shifted backwards like a goat. I can't make that claim, as I did not see its eyes, nor could I really see its legs in detail, but this thing was not a normal animal. That much I am certain of. Unfortunately, it was in the middle of the night, and we were both a bit tipsy, so driving away was not a really good idea. We both made a conscious decision to start our fire back up, and just wait the night out, and then drive away when we sobered up in the morning. When the sun came up, we got our stuff together and got the hell out of Dodge. To this day, I am convinced that what we encountered that night was the infamous Jersey Devil. I can't explain what it was, or why it chose to check out our little camp like it had, but I am grateful that it did not go any further or decide that it wanted us. I know that nothing really happened to us thankfully, but it was still a scary moment. That was the only time we ever camped out in the Pine Barrens, and I will never forget that thing, whether it was the Jersey Devil or not. 19-year-old American here. I was born and raised on 200 acres, squashed between thousands of untouched acreage of national forest in the Ozark Mountains. I was 15 at the time. No life at all. It's the summer break from high school. I am basically nocturnal at this point. It's sometime around July or August. I've been all night, talking to women. I didn't get up till like 9:30 p.m. though. 4:30 a.m. I took the bong in the bathroom with fart vent on. I take a shower. 5 a.m. In my bedroom on the east side of the trailer, listening to Dr. Dre on Skull Crusher. Cheap beat headphones, very powerful bass. Between 5:17 and 5:25 a.m., I turn off the music, getting ready to crash. There are aluminum sheets stacked up against the fence line on the east side of the property. They crash and bang. I am what the fucking hard. There is a dark blue sheet over the window. I peel it back slightly and look out to see that dawn is barely starting to show. Very loud, paced footing. The footing gets closer. What the fuck? I let go of the sheet. I hear it right next to the well house, 6 feet away from the window. I peek out the window again. I shit in my pants. I see at least a 9-foot tall, bipedal, semi-hairless, with long scraggly hair where there is, pale grey complexion, very lanky and muscular creature standing on the south side of my well house, looking north at the south face of the hill. Its back is turned to my window. I don't see the front. I have an adrenaline spike. I shit my pants even harder. I pull away from looking out the window so hastily I bump my head on the wall. I am laying motionless and silent in bed. This is all happening within a minute's time, but feels like forever. Something, I assume it's a nose, presses against my window screen. I hear the window screen stretch until it lightly taps the outside of my window. I basically assume that I'm going to die within moments. The outside air conditioning unit kicks on. This thing shits and gets gone instantly up the hill. You can hear its footsteps thudding hard. Outside after sun rises, I am too freaked to sleep. There are 16-inch long, kind of human-shaped footprints that laid the tall grass down. This did not look like a Sasquatch whatsoever. We know absolutely nothing about what really exists in the deep woods. To this day, I do not go into the deep woods any time a few hours after or before dark. And every time I do go into the woods, I pack a 12 gauge, a high caliber rifle, or semi-auto 22 LR with a sidearm. And I go slowly, watching, listening, observing, very quietly. I have never seen it since, and never seen any sign of it. I have no explanation whatsoever of what it could have been. And not to be a pussy, but it still makes me tear up every time I think about it. I'm a grown goddamn man. It was 1997. I was 28 years old, and my then BF and I lived in a remote village in Lincolnshire, England. He had a job where he worked from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and I was working in a bar, so I would take him to and from work so I could get myself to work with the one car we shared. It's probably worth mentioning that the car was brand new. It had something crazy like 18 miles on the clock when we got it. I wanted something newer than the car that we had before because I did not like the idea of being stranded down a dark country lane if the old car decided to shit itself when I was driving alone. I don't know how many people know Lincolnshire, but most of it is rural with thin, winding roads, and the place is so flat you can see for miles. I used to drive to pick my ex up, and the views in spring when the mornings were getting lighter was and still are breathtaking. So, imagine farmers' fields all around you with a basic little road snaking along the edges. The fields themselves were separated in rows by not quite saplings, but trees that would be a couple of years old, still thin and gangly, and at this particular time of year were just starting to show hints of new leaves on their skinny branches. An absolutely beautiful drive in the lighter mornings, mainly because I was usually the only person on the road, so I could drive as slow as I liked to watch the sun coming up over the horizon. Okay, so I hope I've described the place enough to paint an image. Here is where the story starts. So, one morning, I was driving along the little road. It was about 5:30 a.m., and the sun was just peeking out on the horizon, and the sky was completely cloudless. I slowed down to watch it as I often did, not paying much attention to the trees, as they were in a row that ran down the side of the field, so they were never in the way of the view. In my peripheral, I thought I saw something move amongst the skinny trees, so I stopped the car completely, thinking it might be a deer or something interesting like that. I waited for a few seconds, and nothing happened, so I was just about to restart the car when I saw two of the trees walking out of the lineup. I say trees, but I don't have a clue what they actually were. Remember, this is a long time before the internet, and the Slender Man, and all the tales and superstition, etc. I was literally frozen to the spot with fear. Two tall things walked out of the line of trees, and started walking over to me. I was about 50 to 60 yards away from them, and the only thing that I could possibly describe them as were these oversized stick insects. They had 2 long legs and 2 long arms that almost touched the ground, and I would say the tallest one must have been easily 12 feet tall, the smaller one maybe 10 feet tall. They walked in a fluid motion, as if they were wading through treacle. Like long hair would glide through water. It was just slow and graceful. When my brain finally kicked into flight mode, I started my car and glanced over to see how close they had gotten. All the while, I was putting my car into gear and started it moving. The tallest one slowly lifted his arm upwards, like a silk scarf gliding through light wind, and pointed it directly at me. My car instantly stalled. The dashboard warning lights were all on. All of them lit up, and at the same time, I got the worst pain in my face. Mainly my jaw, but it made me scream out in agony, and I almost blacked out just from the pain. With the pain debilitating me, I knew I needed to get away, and fast. I was so terrified that the car would not start again, because all of the lights were still on, so I turned the engine entirely off, and thankfully, it started again, and I drove like a mad woman to get out of sight. All the time, my face/jaw was burning, and when I got to my ex's work, he gave me a bottle of water to cool me down, but it did not do much to help. And for weeks, my mouth felt like I had chewed on poison ivy, my jaw feeling like I had an abscess under each molar. I needed to see a dentist, and I knew that, but explaining what happened would have made me feel stupid, so I put it off. I had 3 amalgam fillings, all in my lower molars, and once the worst of the pain had gone, a couple months later, I could not put anything metal in my mouth without getting a shock, like licking a battery kind of shock. So I was eating with plastic cutlery all the time and decided to give in and see if the dentist would change my fillings to the ceramic ones. The dentist looked in my mouth and asked what had happened to my teeth. I played it off casually and just asked him why. My fillings looked like little balls of mercury, so I explained the car ride, etc., and he said that my fillings looked like they had melted and pulled into smooth, rounded metal balls. I have no idea what happened or what the fuck those things did to me.